Will Smith was always a charismatic, funny guy with an incredible ability to make people laugh. But there's something he has never told. Something he saw with his own eyes. Something that defied all logic and, to this day, he still can't explain. It all started when he was cast as the lead in Men in Black. The idea of playing a secret agent investigating extraterrestrials fascinated him, but what he never imagined was that, off-screen, he would experience something far stranger than any sci-fi movie. On the second day of filming, while reviewing the script, a man in a dark suit approached him. Will didn't know him. He wasn't part of the crew. No one had seen him come in. "Mr. Smith, the movie you're working on is not as far from reality as you think." Will smiled, assuming it was a prank by the director or someone from the production team. But when he turned around to respond, the man was gone. In the following days, strange things started happening. The lights on set flickered without reason. Some files related to the movie were mysteriously deleted. And several crew members swore they had seen shadows moving in the darkness. But the most unsettling event happened one night after a long day of filming. Will Smith was driving home alone in Los Angeles. It was a quiet night. Or so he thought. Suddenly, his car stopped working in the middle of the road. The dashboard shut off. The engine completely died. His phone had no signal. Silence filled the air. And then, he saw it. Just a few meters away, in the sky, a bright light hovered in complete silence. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a drone. It moved in an impossible way. The light slowly descended, coming closer and closer. Will felt his body freeze. His mind screamed for him to run, but something inside him told him to stay. What happened next defied everything he thought was possible. Will Smith tried to move his legs, but he couldn't. It was as if an invisible force was holding him in place. His heart pounded, and his breathing grew rapid. The light in the sky began to change. From a bright white, it shifted to a deep, pulsating blue, as if it were breathing. Suddenly, a strange sound filled the air. It wasn't loud or deafening, it was a whisper. But the most terrifying part was that the sound was inside his head. "Do not be afraid." Will felt a chill run down his spine. There was no one around him, yet the voice was clear, as if someone was speaking from within his own mind. Then, the light descended further, hovering just a few meters above his car. Now, he could see its shape clearly. It wasn't just a simple sphere of light. It was something more, something that didn't seem to be made by human hands. The floating object began to spin slowly, and from its center, a humanoid figure emerged. It had no face. No mouth. But Will could feel its presence with an overwhelming intensity. "We are not here to harm you." Will swallowed hard. He couldn't speak. He couldn't move. "You are on the right path. But there are things you are not yet ready to understand." The light started to surround him, as if scanning him. A strange warmth spread through his body. And suddenly, a flood of images rushed into his mind. Visions of distant galaxies, unknown planets, symbols he had never seen before. He saw entire civilizations traveling through space, cities floating in the sky, beings walking among humans without anyone noticing. But the strangest thing was the final image he saw. It was himself, but much older. He was standing on a massive stage, surrounded by thousands of people, and behind him was a flag that didn't belong to any country on Earth. And then, everything went dark. The car turned back on as if nothing had happened. The light vanished in an instant, as if it had never been there. Will looked around, trying to process what had just happened. His phone had signal again. But when he checked the time, he realized 3 hours had passed. He had no memory of what had happened during that time. But something inside him had changed. And although he never spoke publicly about that night, his life was never the same again. Will Smith remained seated in his car, his trembling hands gripping the steering wheel. 3 hours had passed. 3 hours he couldn't remember. But his body remembered. He could feel it. A tingling sensation on his skin, a warmth in his head, and a strange feeling of lightness, as if something inside him had awakened. Finally, he started the car and drove home in complete silence. He didn't play music. He didn't call anyone. He just stared at the road, his mind trapped in what he had seen. That night, when he tried to sleep, the visions returned. He dreamed of the same floating object. The voice inside his head. The image of himself, many years in the future, standing before a cheering crowd. But this time, he saw something more. A symbol. A simple geometric figure, with 3 lines intersecting at a central point. It was strange, yet familiar. As if he had seen it before. He woke up abruptly, covered in sweat. He couldn't ignore it anymore. The next day, on the set of Men in Black, he tried to act normal. But something inside him felt out of place. He had the unsettling feeling that someone was watching him. And then, he saw him. The same man in the black suit who had approached him days earlier. This time, Will didn't let him slip away. He walked toward him with determination, but before he could speak, the man handed him a small folded piece of paper. If you want answers, come here. Tonight. Alone. Will took the paper and slowly unfolded it. It was an address. When he looked up, the man was already gone. His mind filled with questions. Who was this man? Did he know what had happened? Was he even human? But one thing was certain. He had to find out the truth. That night, at the specified time, Will drove to the address. It was an old, abandoned building on the outskirts of Los Angeles. He stepped out of the car and cautiously approached the door. He took a deep breath, pushed the door open. And what he saw inside changed his life forever. Will Smith carefully pushed the door open. The old building was dark and completely silent. The air smelled of dust and age, as if no one had been there for decades. As he stepped inside, the door shut behind him with a sharp thud. His instincts told him he was walking into something far bigger than he could comprehend. Hello? He called out, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. No response. Only the sound of his own voice bouncing back at him. But then, he saw something at the end of the hallway. A faint light glowing from an open room. Will moved forward cautiously, feeling his heartbeat quicken. When he reached the doorway, he saw a group of men seated around a table, illuminated by a single desk lamp. They were all dressed in dark suits. And at the center of the table, there was something that took his breath away. A drawing of the exact same symbol he had seen in his dream. 3 lines intersecting at a central point. Exactly the same. One of the men looked up and gestured for him to take a seat. Will hesitated, but something inside him told him he needed to stay. We knew you would come, the man said in a deep voice. Will narrowed his eyes. Who are you? The man leaned forward slightly. We are the ones who know the truth. The truth about what you saw. About what you've seen, and about what you will see. A chill ran down Will's spine. Are you telling me that what I saw on the road was real? One of the men smirked slightly. Not only was it real, Will. It was a test. Will swallowed hard. A test? A test for what? The man took a deep breath and slid an old file across the table. A test to prove that you are one of the chosen ones. And that your story is just beginning. Will opened the file, and his mind nearly exploded. There were photos of him, but from years ago. Photos he had never seen. Pictures of him with people he didn't recognize. And on the last page, a black and white image showed something impossible. A man identical to him, in a photograph from 1947. Will dropped the file and shot to his feet, his body trembling. This can't be real. The men stared at him, their expressions unchanged. Everything you thought you knew about your life is about to change. Will felt the air grow heavier. Something was happening. Something far beyond his understanding. And then, a new voice echoed in the room. But it didn't come from any of the men. It was a whisper inside his head. We will meet again very soon. The lights flickered. And the last thing he saw before everything went black were 2 glowing eyes watching him from the darkness. The end. Remember, this story is fiction. But, what if it isn't? If you liked the video, subscribe and turn on notifications for more incredible stories. Drop your theory in the comments. Do you think Will Smith experienced something he hasn't told us?